Good afternoon and welcome to our third annual career panel for Let's Talk Science volunteers. My name is Lauren and I work as a program support coordinator at Let's Talk Science. Let's Talk Science is a national charitable organization committed to inspiring Canadian youth to develop the skills they'll need for their futures. To accomplish this, Let's Talk Science offers a comprehensive suite of science, technology, engineering, and math-based programs and resources for youth, educators, and volunteers. In addition, to support the career readiness of our post-secondary student volunteers, we offer professional development opportunities, including these career panels. Today, we've brought together a panel of human resources professionals who will be sharing how new or soon-to-be graduates can leverage the skills and experiences they've gained as a volunteer with Let's Talk Science in their early career, as well as answer your questions about resumes, your job search, interviewing, and networking. So to get us started, I'd like to welcome our panelists and say thank you very much for joining us today. I'd like to invite each of you to introduce yourself, your current position, and to tell us a bit about your career or academic pathways. So we will start with Heather, please.
Taking yourself off mute is a good thing to start with. Welcome everybody, and hi to my fellow panelists as well. So I'm Heather Small. I am currently the HR manager with Let's Talk Science. I've been with Let's Talk Science in various capacities for 14 years now and been in several positions throughout that time, from finance to fund development, information systems, and lastly, HR. As you may have guessed from that listing, my career path nor my education path were straight. So I began post-secondary school actually in a finance focused program, and partway through that realized that I really enjoyed the human aspects of the business program that I was in. And it was a program at Western University here in London that has a wickedly long name that I won't bore you with. In my third year, actually decided to switch my major from finance to HR. In and around that same time, I began working a number of part-time and summer positions with Let's Talk Science. And partway through my studies, kind of was given the opportunity with Let's Talk Science to have positions that were partially focused within HR. So that was good. And sort of throughout that time, as the organization grew, I was able to grow, and my machination of experiences was partially based on the fact that as the organization grew, there was more and more need for some of the partially held functions to become their own function, and eventually we grew enough that HR needed its own dedicated person. So in terms of my actual career journey in HR, it was started when I was partway through my post-secondary studies with Let's Talk Science. And because of the change partway through my program, I actually didn't end up with all of the courses completed that you need to write your professional designation in HR in Ontario. And so I actually went back and did some of those courses in a part-time capacity while I was working, and then wrote that exam. So today as I mentioned, I'm the HR manager at Let's Talk Science, and we now have an HR team of 2. So I think when I started, I was the only one kind of focused on it at probably less than half time. And in that team, we work with our senior leadership team, our management, and the staff throughout the organization to oversee a range of HR functions, from staff relations to health and safety, to HR policy and administration, compensation and benefits, and obviously the reason that I'm on the panel today, recruitment, training, and development, also fall into that portfolio. Over the 7 years that I've sort of been with Let's Talk Science in a full-time capacity after I finished my studies, We've grown about 65% in terms of our staff complement, and I've been part of sort of the recruitment and selection that led to the hiring of all of those positions. That was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 full-time positions, covering a range of functions from business services like accounting, HR, administrative services, IT, to more program functions like our outreach program or our education programs that Lauren was talking about when she opened. And then on top of that, there's been too many to count in terms of short-term contracts, seasonal and summer positions as well. So that's a little bit about me. So welcome, and I'm looking forward to answering some of the questions that you've got for us today.
Thanks so much, Heather. That's great to hear. And Nikki, please. Nikki, you might be on mute still at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
Not a problem.
So my name is Nikki Viera. I'm a senior talent acquisition advisor that specializes in technology roles within Great-West Life. Talent acquisition is a fancy word for recruitment. I do manage the full cycle of recruitment for entry-level to executive-level roles within information technology businesses across Canada. I've been with Great-West Life for just over 3 years. Great-West Life is a part of the Life Co umbrella, which is made up of 3 companies. There's Great-West Life in Winnipeg, London Life in London, and then Canada Life in Toronto. We also have many other satellite offices across Canada. We are known as one of Canada's leading financial services organizations, and we do employ approximately 10,000 staff across Canada. Life Co has always been a top employer across Canada, and we've won many awards, like Top Employer for Young People, Canada's Top 100 Employees, and most recently we have won for U of M, one of the top employers for co-op students as well. I'm definitely passionate about helping people, and I think that's how I got into human resources. I wanted to help people get their dream job. I quickly found out you have to actually decline a lot of candidates to get that one person their dream job. But besides that, I do love what I do. I tend to always find myself volunteering my personal time by coaching others on resume writing and interviewing skills. I also volunteer with some non-for-profits like ComIT, and that's an organization that teaches newcomers to Canada programming skills and Level It Up IT, and that's a program that helps candidates with high-functioning autism get into the IT workforce. Diversity and inclusion holds a special place in my heart, and I'm always looking for more ways to implement that in my daily work. Talking about schooling now, I did go to school at the University of Winnipeg to pursue a career in HR management back in 2014. While taking part-time night courses, I was working as an executive assistant and an HR coordinator at a telecommunications company. And that's where it really sparked my interest in tech roles. And then after completing schooling, I worked briefly at a recruitment agency prior to landing my current job here at Great-West Life, supporting information technology. In Winnipeg, we are one of the top IT employers. We work kind of like a consulting company and provide shared enterprise services to internal customers, which is our employees of Great-West Life. And then within the past 3 years, I would say I've excelled in my career. I started off as a generalist, then a TA advisor, and now a senior TA advisor. Great-West Life does provide a lot of opportunities for continuing education, which is great. They provide employees $2,000 a year to go back to school to further education. And that's the reason I was able to go back to university last year to achieve my career and employment coach certificate. I may not have come from that true, tech education background, but I definitely get to immerse myself daily with technology-minded individuals, and I learn more about comp sci and the digital world every day. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Nikki. And Renee, please.
Great. Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. My fellow panelists. It's a privilege to be here. I probably will start off and let you know that I had a very little career direction. I always loved science, and I pursued a science education. So I went to U of T, graduated with an undergrad degree in life sciences, and I had no clue what to do next. So I really will sympathize with a lot of questions from the, all of you volunteers. But what I did, honestly, because it just felt that science was great and I had fun at school, I went to do my master's in molecular biology, so again, science. And I was very nicely surprised to be approached and offered a sales job right out of school, which was interesting because I did not consider myself salesy. I thought, well, science, lab coat, it wasn't that. My office was in the car, a lot of windows, a lot of freedom, a lot of spending time on the road. And after more or less 7 years, I realized that I was doing a lot of training. I was doing a lot of recruitment for my team. And I found that those activities were giving me some energy. And I honestly thought that this was a moment to sit back, revisit, maybe see where do I see myself next. I wish, maybe I did it before, but someone gave me some good advice and I did some soul searching. I quit my job, went back to school. I did my master's in HR. And I really had this dream of combining recruitment, which I loved, with science. So my first job was at an agency called Cali Scientific. So I was on an agency side, working with scientists, created a lot of wonderful careers. I moved into a corporate world, and I honestly never looked back. Now I have a team of 6 talent acquisition partners at Roche. Roche is a pharma company. We are based out of Switzerland, very innovative, very big, very much into science and research. And in Mississauga, we have over 800 employees. Globally, we have 94,000 employees. And it's just one of these places that really, really allows you to tap into your talents. So again, if you were to ask me 20 years ago if I would ever end up in HR, I would probably tell you no, because science was my life. But here I am, and I am very, very keen on, offering some advice, telling people what my career journey was, and hopefully addressing some questions.
That's great. Thank you. It's always so interesting to hear everyone's career pathways and where it's taken them. So we will start with the questions now. I have a few questions that were pre-submitted in advance by our volunteers. So we'll get started with those, and we are very happy to take live questions. If anyone watching the live event today has a question for any of our panelists, please use the comment section on the YouTube stream. We will get to as many questions as we can during our time together today. So our first question is for Renee, a 4th year biological sciences student from the Let's Talk Science outreach site at the University of Windsor writes, I am a 4th year undergraduate student in biology. I would like to know about the kinds of jobs that I would be qualified for after graduation. Additionally, I'm wondering if Roche Canada hires any undergraduates, and if so, what are the positions I would be eligible to apply for?
Okay, very, very loaded question. I absolutely sympathize. It's difficult to assess the market out there. So for any science graduates, I always have 2 pieces of advice. You can always look for entry-level jobs, jobs that say coordinator, associate. In our case, it could be medical coordinator, marketing associate, other jobs that are a little bit more intimidating, but they could also be entry-level, like market access, data management associate, patient programs, patient outcome scientist, and so on. So that's one advice. There are tons of entry-level jobs, but I also want to caution every young or science graduate that it's, there's a lot of science jobs, and maybe it's better to do a little bit of soul searching and see what might be a job of interest, because very often your first job opens up opportunities, and before you know it, your career is decided for you because you just landed a first job. So there are some, I call them top-up courses in regulatory affairs, in quality assurance, in quality control, in marketing, in medical, in clinical trials. Try them out. Sometimes those courses take a month to complete. Some of them have intern or co-op options. You know, you've already invested 4 years probably of your life and a lot of money. This would probably be 1 more month and, you know, a couple of $100s. But if that's not an option, just do a little bit of soul searching and only apply to those jobs that really, really interest you. If it's sales or if it's medical or if it's marketing, there are entry-level jobs out there. And then for Roche Canada, well, I hesitate to, you know, overpromise or to say things that are not true. Roche is a huge company. We are global. We are one of the top pharma companies. Sometimes our preference is to either hire from an intern cohort. We have some schools that we offer co-op jobs with and internships with. So it's an easy way for us to select from those individuals for entry-level jobs. Sometimes we like 2 or 3 years of experience because we just can't be this picky. So it's very difficult to land an entry-level job with Roche because we are just so big and so, you know, we have a big brand name. But sometimes you could start at a smaller pharma company, and after a couple of years, that your resume or your application will be very appealing.
That's great information. Thank you very much. So our next question is, how can Let's Talk Science volunteers translate the skills they develop during volunteer work into deliverables and attributes that they can put on a resume or job application and make it stand out? So Nikki, would you like to get us started on this question?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, when you're starting to apply for positions and you may have more volunteer experience than you do for work experience, I would recommend going with a skill-based or functional resume versus the backwards chronological order resume. So the chronological resume focuses more on work experience, whereas your skill-based is more based on your skills. So you can really translate your volunteer experience right at the beginning of your resume. You might not actually have work experience, but you definitely do have real life volunteer experience. Just that chronological resume, I find it exposed job hopping or spotty work employment, or it does expose lengthy stays in one job without promotion. So there's definitely a lot of benefits on having that skill-based or functional-based resume. I personally have a mixture of or a combination of both, but I normally recommend you know, reviewing that job description. Every resume should actually be different for each job that you're applying for, because you're really going to be looking at what the qualifications are for that job and pulling out the skills and putting that in your resume right at the beginning. Always think about what the top 3 or 4 skills the employer is looking for, and why would they want to hire you for that position, and just make sure that translates well on your resume with your volunteer experience, if that makes sense. Does anyone have anything else to add?
Heather, do you have anything to add to this question? How can volunteers translate the skills they develop into deliverables and attributes to put on a resume or a job application?
Sure. I think Nikki touched on it a little bit with what she was talking about, but it's what I always advise when you're in HR, you get all your friends asking you what you should do with your resume and your cover letter. So I'll share the advice with you that I share with them. And that is, like Nikki said, take the top skills that the employer is looking for and reflect on how your experience has built those skills and write that cover letter and that resume for that position. Then I like to say, HR people aren't lazy, but I say pretend that we are. You usually have about 30 seconds to a minute for that resume to capture our attention. And so talk about your skills and abilities as they relate to that position in a very concrete way that the person reading can really picture what you've actually done. And don't try to make the person that's reading the application try to figure out how your experience relates to the role that you're applying for. If you do, your application in most cases will get passed by if you don't do that.
That's great, Heather. Thank you. And Renee, do you have anything to add to this question? How can volunteers translate the skills they develop into deliverables and attributes to put on a resume?
I absolutely agree with both recommendations from Nikki and Heather. I would just say that, you know, volunteers, you should really be proud of that, because I don't know my statistics, but I can assure you that not every resume has a volunteering entry. You might know collaboration, teamwork, innovation, maybe technology. Leverage those, fish them out. It's not just volunteering, it's projects, it's, you know, competitions, and they absolutely translate into transferable skills for any job.
That's great. Thank you very much. So Heather, following up on one of your previous comments there, what makes a resume stand out to you?
So I think I'd start with one, I can read it and I can follow it. It seems really, really simple. There's also power, I would say, in white space. Sometimes you get resumes that try to cram every thing that anybody could possibly want to know into the, you know, 1 or 2 pages of paper. That comes back to the tailoring. Really be thoughtful about what you're putting on paper for what position. And honestly, formatting and white space go a really long way.
That's great, Heather. Thank you. And Nikki, do you have anything to add? What makes a resume stand out to you?
So just some maybe don'ts for resumes. A lot of people want to put their picture on resumes for some reason. I'm sure you look gorgeous, but I don't need to see your photo. Marital status, that doesn't need to be on there either. But talking about formatting as well, just keep in mind a lot of employers have applicant tracking systems, and if you upload a resume that has a lot of graphics or is in a different format, I might not be able to see it properly like how you uploaded it originally. So just keep that in mind. Simple is kind of the way to go for me, just because of my system. When I review resumes, half the time I can't read them if it's a graphic design student because of the formatting.
It's great to hear. Thanks. And Renee, what makes a resume stand out for you?
Sure. So assuming that most of the volunteers tuning in would be young individuals, maybe graduates, I would say there's no reason for your resume to be more than 1 or 2 pages. And I would also say, and it's sad to say, but please do a spell check. A spelling mistake on your resume is just not the best business card. No essays, bullet points are much easier. I would say stay away from those, you know, Google recommendations where they say, you know, I'm a perfectionist, or, you know, things that just don't sound authentic. And honestly, your resume is your business card. So imagine someone cannot meet you, but they meet you on paper. So just make sure that you really come across as whoever you are, you know, organized, professional, interested.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we have a live chat question. So what should I say if I'm asked what my salary expectations are, if it's my first job and I don't really know what I should be asking for? So Nikki, would you like to get us started on this question, please?
Definitely. For this question, I always say do your market research before you go into an interview. Have an idea of what you want. Everyone has kind of the lowest, kind of a ballpark, what they would be wanting to be paid. I hate when people come into interviews and they say whatever the job pays, because if I'm paying you no money, you might not want the position. So go in confident, give a range. I normally say a $5,000, $10,000 range might be a little bit too much, but the $5,000 range is usually really good. But just go in confident on what you're looking for, and always end off that you're open to negotiation, but definitely go in with a number.
So Heather, do you have anything to add to this? What should I do if I'm unsure what my salary expectation should be for a first job?
So I echo Nikki, do your research. There's definitely that data out there so that you sort of have that as a basic point. And then I think about your personal considerations and what kind of that would mean. And I say this, anytime we ask for it, it's really just to understand whether there's actually a match there and there's a room that we're in the same ballpark, essentially. Don't worry that because you ask for less, all of a sudden it's going to be that the position pays between X and Y, and all of a sudden we're going to go, well, we can get them for 20,000 less. So let's just do that. That isn't usually why that question is asked of an applicant.
Some great insights there. And Renee, anything to add? If what should I say if I'm asked about my salary expectations and it's my first job?
So very interesting. We used to do that, ask for salary expectations. Now we still do, but we help our candidates a little bit now because our actually US counterparts are walking away from that question, and it's becoming a bit of a gray zone, almost illegal. So to help candidates out, and because I work for a company that's very fair, and even if your expectations are much lower than the job, you're still going to get paid what the job pays or the pay range. So I sometimes invite people to give me salary expectations, but I always feel very sympathetic if they miss the mark. And I then tell them, this is my range. This is what my working range is. This is where this job should land. What do you think about that? So if a candidate, if an applicant has no idea, you could always very respectfully say, I really don't know. I'm new to a job search. Would you be able to share a reasonable range with me? You can, maybe not everybody will do. At Roche, we definitely will. But you don't have to be very stressed out over that question. It could be two-way street.
That's some really interesting insights there from everyone. So our next question is, what is the best job interview question that you have been asked or that you like to ask during interviews? So Heather, would you like to get us started on this question?
Sure, and I'll go with, I've got two answers actually here.
That's fine.
So one is, we at Let's Talk Science are big fans of task-based interview questions where you actually demonstrate a skill or ability that is important to the job. So that's kind of favorite number one. In terms of an actual question that we ask, I'm going to go with one that's a more recent addition to our sort of bank of questions that we go to, and it is, tell us about a time that you've attempted something but failed. What was the nature of that, and what did you learn from it? And sort of the twist on that is, it's not so much about what the candidate failed doing. It's really, what was the reflection they had on that? What did they learn from that experience? What sort of human capacity growth do they bring to the position, whatever that position is?
Great, thanks, Heather. And Renee, what is the best job interview question that you have been asked or that you like to ask during interviews?
So I have a lot of favorite interview questions. Of course, it's what makes me tick. I absolutely agree with the, give me an example of a failure. I sometimes ask them, when was the last time you made the mistake? What did you learn from it? So absolutely, this is a wonderful, humbling question. I also like to ask, what was the most constructive feedback you've received, and was it a surprise to you? How did it come about? What did you do about it? Because constructive feedback is what helps you grow. And I would say that my favorite questions are those questions where someone needs to be very authentic, very real, or someone needs to be a little bit humble, because that's when you see the personality.
Wonderful. And Nikki, what's the favorite interview question that you have been asked or that you like to ask during interviews?
So I am big on candidates coming into the interview with 5+ questions for myself. That shows that you've done your research and you're prepared for the interview. Always come in with questions, because it's not only our chance to interview the candidate, it's also the candidate's chance to interview the employer to make sure that you want to work for us and it's a fit for both. One of my, I guess, favorite questions or what I've been getting asked quite a bit is why do you like working for X company, or for me, Great-West Life? It's a great way for myself to showcase why I do love the company, and it kind of gives me a chance to kind of sell the company to the candidate. So that's a really good one for people to ask, and maybe challenges that they foresee in this position, kind of preparing them for the role. And why did the last person leave? That gives a lot of insight on, was it a retirement? Was it a termination? That could give a lot of insight for the candidate as well. And then question that I really like to ask, I ask this in all my tech positions and interviews. I ask the candidate how they keep up with technology, because it is ever changing. And it's really great to hear what the candidate's doing on their own time to keep up, and not on work time, just to see if they have that natural interest in technology.
That's great. Those were some really interesting and thought-provoking questions there. So our next question for the panelists is, how important is an online presence, for example, LinkedIn? So Renee, could you get us started on this question, please?
Sure. Well, I am in recruitment, so I am sure my answer will be biased. I love online or presence or social media presence. Of course, minus Facebook, we as an employer don't check your Facebook, minus Twitter, that's not really relevant, but LinkedIn has become a search tool for us. If you want some recruiters to reach out to you, maybe someone asking for recommendations, or maybe someone asking if you're interested in their jobs, that's how they find you. So I would say it is important, because it is something that is professional, accessible. You don't have to be a job seeker to be open or be visible to recruiters. So I would say for me, it is very important. But please keep in mind, I am in recruitment, so I am biased.
Okay, and Nikki, what are your thoughts regarding an online presence, for example, a profile through LinkedIn?
I definitely agree with the previous comments. I'm huge on LinkedIn. When I'm doing my screening for candidates, or if I'm looking or sourcing for candidates, I guarantee you 90% of the day I have LinkedIn up on one screen, or I have an association website up on one screen. But definitely LinkedIn is our go-to. A lot of recruiters are, and it's kind of a place for you to put out your external brand. So I'm huge on candidates having LinkedIn. And even if you don't believe that your job would benefit from having a LinkedIn, it's just a great networking tool. So it's a great place to try and find mentors. There's lots of groups on LinkedIn to check out. I guarantee that there's something that would benefit everyone on LinkedIn.
Great. And Heather, how important is an online presence, for example, LinkedIn?
I would agree with everything that Renee and Nikki have said so far. I'd also say that if you are going to set up an online presence, that you really do that. As Nikki and Renee said, we do, as recruiters, end up on LinkedIn looking to source candidates, and the way that we can do that and come across your profile and really want to reach out and contact you is if you give us more than just names and titles. Really tell us what you've done. Really make it an online resume of sorts. And here's where I also say, make sure that you're following whatever the company's application procedures are, though. Definitely there are times where we're asking for a cover letter and a resume and we get just a LinkedIn, like a link to a LinkedIn profile. And in those cases, you're actually, if you're only doing that, you could actually be doing yourself a disservice. So certainly, link your LinkedIn profile in a cover letter or a resume, but certainly make sure you're following whatever the company's application procedures are or what they've asked for.
Great, thank you, Heather.
Sorry, just one more. Just wanted to mention, if anyone doesn't have a LinkedIn and they want to see how to set it up, don't hesitate to connect with myself on LinkedIn and check out my profile and see how I have it set up. But I could definitely help you out if you have any questions. Just send me an email, or sorry, send me a LinkedIn message.
That's wonderful, Nikki. Thank you very much. That's really kind of you. So our next question is, when you don't have a lot of work experience, how can you make your CV or application stand out? So Nikki, would you like to get us started on this question, please?
Yeah, and for this question, it's kind of, we kind of, for me, went over it in the first question about the type of resume. So for myself, I would recommend having that skill-based resume. So you're translating the skills that is required for the job right into the front of your resume, and stating, for example, teamwork or whatever it may be, and then bullet points supporting that. And then in your bullet points, just make sure you have, I guess, a PAR is what I like to say. So your problem, action, result in one statement, if that makes sense. So just for an example, designed and implemented a new performance appraisal system for nursing staff that simplified the process and included a self-assessment component. That sounds like a lot, but the PAR is what is key, just making sure that you have a problem, action, and result in those bullet points for your skills.
That's a great summary. Thank you. And Heather, when you don't have a lot of work experience, how can you make your CV or application stand out?
So I would agree with what Nikki has said, but I mean, the fact that you've even volunteered with Let's Talk Science and you're on this webinar, think about kind of what you've done with Let's Talk Science, or what you've done with your other volunteer interactions, what you've done with, I'm just trying to think, student kind of club groups. There's lots of things that you can think about. The other thing that just popped into my head was group work or projects that you've done at school. Is there skills that you've built in those that you can translate and build those bullet points that Nikki was talking about in a skills-based resume?
Great. And Renee, when you don't have a lot of work experience, how can you make a CV or resume stand out?
Again, I really agree with the previous comments. And Heather mentioning, clubs, competitions, group work. That's work. That's what office work is all about. I had a couple of questions before, so I wonder if this could resonate with someone as well. Students are hesitant to put on their McDonald's or Tim Hortons experience. They graduate with a university degree and there's nothing. Please don't do that, because as employers, we actually understand that, working for Tim Hortons also teaches you, time management, working with others, customer service, nothing to be ashamed of. It might be not relevant to the job, but it shows us that, you can wake up at 9, go to work, work with your shifts, survive in the job for whatever many months or years. So I would say every experience, every group work, every club is work experience on a resume for, a young graduate. Of course, the more work experience you gain, you can selectively drop some of those entries.
That's great advice. Thank you. So our next question is, besides going to school, what should our volunteers be doing throughout the year to prepare for a job? So Renee, advice on preparing yourself for a job.
Sorry, is it me?
Yes, if you'd like to get us started on this one.
Absolutely, happy to start. I think we had some messages before what it means to really get a head start. Volunteering with Let's Talk Science is a wonderful, entry resume. And when you don't have a lot of work experience, we know people need to start somewhere. Don't invent it. Leverage skills that maybe are teamwork, communication, that you needed to hone on when you were working on a project. Ask your parents, colleagues. They sometimes have ideas. Sometimes you might be blindsided to something that is work experience, and others could help you think of that. I don't believe there is a student today in our education system who doesn't have project and group work, and that could be on the resume for an entry-level position for someone who doesn't have actual paid work experience.
Great, thank you. And Nikki, besides going to school, what should volunteers be doing to prepare for a job?
Lots of networking. I would definitely recommend reaching out, maybe your professional, whatever you're going into, that there's probably an association, there's probably association events that you can go to, get that LinkedIn account or other means of connecting with individuals that are in that career already, and just getting your name out there. So I would definitely recommend networking. And then besides that, try and get a mentor. I think mentors are a huge benefit for anyone in any level of their career, especially when you're starting out. I got a mentor before I went into HR, who was in HR, and she's been with me throughout my career, and she's really opened up the doors. And sometimes they have insight on maybe the informal job market, so maybe jobs that are coming up and stuff like that. So get a mentor if you can, and then start networking.
Great. And Heather, besides going to school, what should volunteers be doing throughout the year to prepare for a job?
I would agree with everything that, again, Renee and Nikki have said. Sometimes the things that you don't think of as networking, though, actually are. So I'm thinking some of the events that your sites might hold for volunteers to get to know one another, that is actually networking. Same thing applies to other clubs or groups that might have on campus. Same thing. The more people you know, the more they may, be in companies that are recruiting, and it can help you get your foot in the door.
Great, thank you. So we just had another live question come in. If I didn't finish my degree, do I put it on my CV? So Nikki, would you get us started with this one, please?
I definitely agree. If you don't finish your degree, still put it on your CV, because it definitely shows that you went to school. I would indicate the courses that you completed within that degree, instead of maybe putting the degree's name. And then just make sure you're prepared to speak about why you didn't complete that degree in the interview. But definitely, I think it is very important. It's a great experience, regardless if you finished or not.
Thank you. And Renee, do you have anything to add? If I didn't finish my degree, do I put it on my CV?
I would make sure that there is somewhere, maybe in brackets, saying incomplete or in progress, because it could be misleading if you just put a degree, and sometimes we don't ask about it. when I see a degree on the resume, I assume it's completed. So if you say incomplete or in progress, it's going to be more helpful.
Okay, thank you. And Heather, do you have anything to add to this question? If I didn't finish my degree, do I put it on my CV?
Nothing to add, but I can say agree with both.
Great, sounds good. So our next question is, what skills do you look for in an applicant? So Heather, would you like to get us started with this one?
Sure. So I would say it's a hard one to answer, because to some degree it's going to be position dependent. But certainly we have a core, what in HR speak we often call core competencies or core skills, that we expect all of our employees to have. That is different to some degree from employer to employer. So this also goes back to reading what the employer is looking for, and translating those skills into the language that that employer uses. Reading becomes very, very key here, I think, is what I would say the message is. In terms of what those are for Let's Talk Science across the board, we look for things like initiative, teamwork. None of the other ones are coming to mind. There are a few others, but those two for sure are in almost every job that we look for.
Excellent, thank you. And Renee, what skills do you look for in applicants?
So that's an easy question for me, because we have just completed an internal exercise. And at Roche, of course, there are jobs, let's say if it's IT or finance, we would be looking for a very specific skill set. But overall, a person that will thrive in the culture of a company is who we would be looking for. So in case of my current employer, it's definitely curiosity, a learning mindset, flexibility. You know, if you want to come in and get a job and do it for the next 10 years or so, Roche might not be a place for you, because we like to see how your job expands with you. Definitely innovation, definitely teamwork, like Heather said. So those are above and beyond all job competencies.
Wonderful. And Nikki, are there any skills you look for in applicants?
Definitely what everyone have said already. I know a big thing for Great West Life, we are trying to hire more out-of-the-box thinkers and more innovative, creative individuals. So I would say those would be, I guess, a few other areas, but definitely the same as everyone else. But innovation is a huge thing right now, especially with everything going digital and agile as well.
Great, thank you everyone. So I think we'll have time for one last question today. So our question is advice for developing a personal network. So Renee, advice for our volunteers on how to help them develop a personal network.
Absolutely. You know, this obviously is a great opportunity to just understand who is in your network. You know, you have the panelists, you have other members. I would say, you know, be aware of events. You know, there's tons of meetups opportunities. If you belong to an association, attend those, you know, breakfast, dinner meetings. Very easy in today's world to really stay at home, be connected virtually to others. But I still believe that there is value in old-fashioned networking. Talk to people, you know, invite your parents to introduce you to others. When you meet new individuals, you know, ask them, where do they work? Where do they come from? It's just basic curiosity. And the only caution I have is that networking is a true interest in others who you meet versus begging for a job. So that's the only distinction I would like to make. But really, for me, it's more of that face-to-face personal outreach. So whatever opportunity, just don't stay home and don't try to network all the time using face-to-face. Sometimes does the magic.
Great, thank you. And Nikki, any advice on developing a personal network?
Everything that was just said, echoing that. And then as well, so you have probably lots of volunteers within Let's Talk Science. So start networking with them as well, and seeing how they are doing with the job market. Family, wherever you're volunteering. Just trying to think of more, but basically anyone you know, network with them. Don't, like Renee said, don't beg for a job, but to let them know that you're going to be in search for a job. Get that mentor as well. I think that's like I mentioned, a huge thing. And then LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn is a great tool. That's your opportunity to reach out to that person that has your dream job and just say, asking for advice. And I would tell you probably 80% of the time, like, people are open to talking about themselves. So definitely reach out to people you don't know and ask questions.
Some great advice there. And Heather, any advice for our Let's Talk Science volunteers on developing a personal network?
I think the other two panelists have definitely captured most of the things I would say. Echo their take advantage of the opportunities that you've got, take a genuine interest in others, ask questions, learn about them. And I guess the one thing that maybe hasn't been said that could be of benefit is have a business card or something, even if it's something that you make on you, so that you can provide them with your contact information so they can reach out to you, you can reach out to them, when those questions come up, or you have something that you want to follow up with them or connect with them again.
That's a great tip, Heather. Thank you. So that does look like all the questions we will have time for today, as I'd like to give each of our panelists a chance to share any closing thoughts or any last piece of advice they have with our volunteers. So Renee, any final thoughts or advice for our volunteers today?
Absolutely. I just want everybody to know that this is, even the fact that they participate in this event shows initiative, shows that they are, ahead of everybody else. I always hear individuals say, but this is so intimidating, this is scary, job search is scary, it's a full-time job. Yes, it is. But please think that others are as afraid as you are. Sometimes hiring managers could be as intimidated by you as you are by them. So, just try. Sometimes even having interviewing experience is worth that rejection. Don't be afraid. Everybody lands a job. Just go for the dream job. Ask a lot of questions, get educated, network. Don't hesitate to reach out to people who might have some good answers.
Thank you. And Nikki, do you have any final pieces of advice or closing thoughts for our volunteers today?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Lauren and Renee and Heather. It's been great today, but volunteers, just don't get discouraged. I know sometimes you keep applying and you don't hear back, but there's going to be a day that you do hear back. So again, just don't get discouraged when you're applying, and do your research on the company. Make sure your resume is reflective of the job that you're applying for. And like I've been saying all day, get a mentor if you can. And even though you may not be in your dream job, you could definitely be a mentor yourself for students that are just starting in that faculty. So definitely that would be a great experience for you too. But thank you.
Thank you. And Heather, any final thoughts or closing advice for our volunteers?
Well, I think just a thank you to everybody. And then I think my kind of piece of advice is, again, goes back to when I'm providing that advice or whatnot to friends or people in my network that are asking about interviewing, is that I always say, going back to that nerve-wracking thing, us on the other side of the table, we are human too. We get it. We get that when you come into an interview, you're likely going to be nervous. We get that it's a hard thing to do. I encourage you to just take that challenge on. I always say, you know, you're better if you're sort of thinking about how to answer a question to stop and give it some thought before you start to answer. A couple seconds of silence is okay. And certainly some people will think I can't take notes while I'm in an interview. Certainly if it helps you to write things down, do what works for you.
That's great. Thanks, Heather. So that does look like all the time we have for today. So I'd like to end by thanking Heather, Nikki, and Renee for taking the time to join us today, as well as sharing their advice and their insights. This was a really great discussion about career readiness. I know myself, I've heard a lot of great tips, advice, and insights I have not heard before. So we do really appreciate you sharing that with us and Let's Talk Science volunteers today. I'd also like to thank everyone that took the time to join us for the live event today, as well as the staff at Let's Talk Science that helped support this initiative. If you know anyone that wasn't able to join us for the live event, we will have this video posted online. So you're welcome to share the link with anyone that might be interested in viewing it, and come back and see it yourself if you find yourself looking for some career readiness advice. So thank you again to everyone, and please stay tuned for more professional development opportunities offered through Let's Talk Science, including a French language career panel that we will be hosting at the end of February 2019. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.